Hey guys, Fox here, and today's time to do the Week 9 review of the 2023 USFL season. This week was the last week of interdivisional games, and essentially it created exactly what the scenarios are for teams to clinch next week. So without further ado, let's get started with the Southern Sweep. The scores ended up being the Gamblers beating the Maulers 20-19, then the Stallions beat the Stars in the championship rematch 27-24, then the Sunday games had the Showboats beat the Generals 25-16, and finally, the Breakers beat the Panthers 24-20. So, once again, we had 4 games that were all one-score games, which is pretty insane. We had it 2 weeks in a row, but the Southern Sweep was definitely insane. Really, all of these games with the Showboats Generals was truly a complete tight-knit game. Well, Gamblers Maulers wasn't so much, so why don't we talk about that one? The Gamblers Maulers, as you can see by just the score in the quarters, you can see that something terrible happened for the Maulers. Essentially, what ended up happening in the fourth quarter, the Gamblers ended up starting the quarter by scoring a touchdown. And then after they scored their touchdown, the Maulers would get a field goal. Then the Gamblers would get another touchdown, 2 in a row, to score their second of the game, or the third of the game. And then the ending would be mainly due to the Maulers missing a field goal at the end of the game. Essentially, the Maulers missed a kick, as well as the Lion Gamblers scored 2 touchdowns, and 2 of their 8 total drives ended up being the difference maker. Essentially, the Gamblers ended up having only 8 drives across the game, and 3 of them ended off in touchdowns, and 1 of them was the end of the game. So the Maulers really did blow a golden opportunity to win this game. The Maulers, they definitely choked this one away. Shame that they lost. This was a huge game for them to win, but now the Gamblers got the W. Then we get into the championship rematch of the Stars and Stallions. This is your classic quarterback duel. Look, the running backs both all played pretty solid, but the fact is that the Stallions had more yards, but had 1 more turnover, and the quarterback battle, the guy who was better won. Even though both men played insanely well, Alex Magoo was the better quarterback. His 21 better pass rating shows that. His 3 TDs to 0 interceptions shows that. His better yards per attempt shows that. His better completion percentage shows that. For how much I say Cookus is back, which he is, the fact is in this matchup, one of the 2 MVP frontrunners, along with Mark Thompson and Alex Magoo, ended up playing a bit better, and that was the big deciding factor. It allowed them to get a fourth quarter drive, which ended up scoring a game-winning touchdown. Congrats to the Stallions. This was a huge game for both teams, and the Stallions ended up getting the W. Then we have the Showboats versus the Generals. All you know is all the basic stats. Look, the fact is that one team held the ball substantially longer. The Showboats not only had 3 more total drives than the Generals, but they also had the ball for 22 minutes nearly more than the Generals did. Essentially, they just completely outpaced them on rushing. They averaged 3.2 yards per attempt on the ground through 46 attempts versus the Generals, who only had 15 ground attempts, as well as the Generals having 1 more turnover. Those 2 things, as well as the time possession, ended up giving the Showboats a huge win. They had nearly 30 more plays than the Generals, despite not having that many more total yards at only 70. Essentially, the Showboats did what they always do this year. They've basically become the Generals of last year. They're making games a lot closer than they're supposed to be, and they end up winning because of how close they make the games and the fact that they're the ones who end up scoring a little bit more. So the Showboats now riding an insane 5-game win streak. Congrats to the Showboats and their fans. 0-3 to 5-3, and now they're looking probably to make the playoffs. Then we have the last game in the Panthers Breakers. Again, this was another great quarterback duel. To all the people who said, the USFL quarterbacks aren't that good, this week really shut a lot of them up. Because just like with the Magoo Cookus, the MBT Josh Love game was also really good. Wasn't as great, but was still a very solid game. Both men had over a 96 or a 96 passer rating. And the fact is, MBT had that despite throwing 2 interceptions, and Love despite throwing 1. But again, the quarterback who had better performance got the W. Josh Love's interception came at the last drive of the game, which ended up being, the nail in the coffin for the Panthers in a late comeback. Since the Breakers did nearly blow the game, especially since they had 3 turnovers in the game, but MBT's overall better performance of 5 better completion percentage, 100 more yards passing, a really solid yards per attempt comparative to Love, and the fact that the Breakers did have the ball for much longer, as well as having 13 more plays and 100 more total yards. Breakers ended up getting this win. Wasn't too surprising, so congrats to the Breakers. It's a shame for Panthers fans, but hey, you know what? The Breakers got the W. They deserved it. Offensive Player of the Week ended up going to Johnny Dixon. This again was another controversial one. I think that the Twitterverse kind of got this one wrong. I think Alex Magoo just had an unbelievable game and should have gotten another award, but Dixon was still very deserving. Look, 9 receptions on 12 targets is already a pretty good stat line. Then when you add 136 yards to that with 2 touchdowns, it's insane. And look, when you get rid of his long of 36, it's still 100 yards and 8 receptions, which is still over 12 yards per catch, which is insane. Dixon had an unbelievable day up through the air, so congrats to him. He had an unbelievable day. Congrats to him. I would have given it to Magoo, but Dixon definitely did deserve it. And the man who has monopolized the DPOY and the team that's monopolized it, Frank Gidna. Through 8 weeks, Gidna now has 3 Defensive Players of the Week, and the team has 5. And the fact is that this was, again, a deserving performance. 11 tackles, 8 solos, 2 TFLs, an interception, and a pass deflection. I mean, come on. He basically had like what one of the defensive lineman guys had as a stat line, as well as one of the cornerbacks put together. Look, he's been unbelievable this season. I said last year he was one of the most underappreciated and slept on players, and this year's been even better than last year. 5 is definitely going to get a shot in the NFL this offseason. I honestly, as a Panthers fan, hope he doesn't. I would love to see him come back every year and just be this dominant force in the team. We'll see. And then, lastly, Special Teams Player of the Week, Alex Kessman. He went 6 for 6 in field goals. He had one for 1 extra points for 19 total points. He deserved it easily. I mean, even though he didn't have really any difficult kicks as 38 was his long, he still went 6 for 6, and we saw multiple other guys miss these kind of kicks. So it really isn't too surprising that he ended up winning this. Like I said, he deserved it 6 for 6, even if he didn't kick as long as, Luis Aguilar did. So overall, very solid performance from Kessman. Another 6 for 6 performance. I think this is like the third one we've had this year, not counting Aguilar's. So yeah, congrats to all the guys for winning Players of the Week. Now, in terms of home games, we only had one this week, and that was the Stallions' last home game of the regular season. And let's just say it was, Look, I'm going to be honest, I think the most disappointing thing of the USFL season this year has been the Stallions' attendance. The fact is that they should be by far the best team in attendance, and instead they're the worst of the 3, worse than Memphis, worse than Detroit. So it's a big disappointment that the defending champs aren't really getting that much fanfare. You could say maybe scheduling, but I think it's just overall a bit disappointing. Their away side naturally is just like Memphis. No one goes there. They don't really sell tickets there, but, unlike Memphis, some people can go there. Home side looked pretty solid, but there were a couple of sections that were very barren, as you can see on there. But overall, they maybe had 10,000, maybe. But look, they're just not doing as good as the Birmingham Iron were a couple years ago in the AAF. Once you eliminate that Week 4 game, the fact is the Iron had 13,000 in every game, and 3 of them had 17,000. The Stallions are not hitting that mark, which I think is a big disappointment when you consider how cheap tickets are and all that. But, hopefully the Stallions, if they end up hosting the home playoff game for the South, that they end up having a lot of fans in that game. I would assume they should open the away side for that game if that happens, but we don't know yet. We'll see. So, overall, I think it was a very okay-ish showing. Wish it was better, but hey, could be worse. Then we have the TV ratings. Very solid week this week. The Gamblers Maulers had 230,000 viewers on USA. Then the Stars Stallions had 750,000 on NBC. Then on Fox, we had the Showboats Gens at 720,000. And then the next game, Panthers Breakers on Fox at 780,000. All 3 over-the-air games at a 0.5 rating versus the 0.1 game on the USA. Compared to last year, the USA game did 20,000 better than last year's 8 p.m. primetime Friday night game. So overall, very solid showing right there. Then their over-the-air games had all 3 at a 0.5 rating. Last year, there was a 0.4 and a 0.5. And the fact is, there had a Fox game that only had 630,000 versus this week, how every one of them had over 700,000. Overall, this is the best week for ratings in a while. Essentially, this is a very good sign, I would say, for the league. The fact that he had 3 over-the-air games end up having over 700,000. Because Fox hadn't really been doing that at all this year. And to have 2 games have that much, I think is a very solid sign. Especially having growth from the first game to the second game. Shows that a lot of people that saw the first game did keep watching the second one. And then more people came in to watch it. So overall, I think this was a very solid showing. When you compare the early weeks to later weeks in the XFL this year and the USFL last year, you see much bigger of a drop-off in viewership than you do the USFL this year. If anything, they're actually an argument the USFL has been growing in a couple of channels. Fox is looking better than it did the beginning and middle of the year. While USA, yeah, it's gone. Well, it's where it is. It had like one exception. NBC is a bit down. Overall, you can make a good case that the USFL has been getting better ratings lately. So I think that overall it's a very solid showing for them. Now, in terms of the standings, the Stars are winning their division at 4-4, followed by the Panthers at 3-5, and the Gens and Maulers 2-6. Then the South, you got the one team winning it, and the Stallions at 6-2. Then the 3-way tie of the Showboats, Breakers, Gamblers at 5-3. So in Week 9, we could have potentially 0 teams clinch or be eliminated and end up having an insane week 10, or we could have 3 teams clinch or in between. Easiest way to view it, the Maulers and Generals are both in the must-win time. If either of them lose, they're eliminated from the playoffs. If the Stars win, they clinch the playoffs. If the Stars win and the Panthers lose, the Stars clinch the division. Now, in terms of on the Panthers, if the Panthers and Stars win, both teams clinch the playoffs. Now, in terms of the South, the Stallions are very simple. Win and in. They win, they clinch the playoffs. They don't clinch the division yet to get that home field advantage between them and the Showboats, but they do make the playoffs. And that's it. If they lose, then no, but if they win, they do. So essentially, the South, the Showboats Breakers game, for all intents and purposes, really only matters for home field. Essentially, it matters if the Showboats win. That means that the Showboats and Stallions are battling to get home field advantage, which would be insane. But we'll see. Overall, that'll do it for this week. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We do at least 3 videos a week during the season. Well, we did 3 videos a week during the season. We're going to have actually more videos per week now that we're getting to the end of the season. Just a couple of weeks till the playoffs, and we're going to have some teams be eliminated and clinch this week. So we'll see. As always, have a great night.